Evans here to give you the latest updates from the world of news, and of course beginning with the headlines. Christians in Kigali have noted that celebrating Easter during this period, when Rwandans are commemorating the 31st anniversary of the genocide against the Tutsi, serves as a reminder of the role of Christianity in addressing significant issues. While it has been 31 years since Queen Rosalie Gicanda was killed on this date, RBA spoke with some of the people who lived with Queen Gicanda and others who used to visit her residence. On the international scene, Pope Francis has lighted Catholics celebrating Easter by marking an appearance at St. Peter's Square in Vatican. Of course, many thanks for joining us for RTV News, and of course, happy Easter to you all. Now, Christians in Kigali have noted that celebrating Easter during this period when Rwandans are commemorating the 31st anniversary of the genocide against the Tutsi serves as a reminder of the role of Christianity in addressing significant issues, including the aftermath of the genocide against the Tutsi. We do have details. Christians from various denominations gathered in churches, with some following teachings outside of the church premises as they celebrated Easter Sunday. Among them were some foreigners living in Rwanda who expressed that they view Easter as a very important day.
Dans toutes les célébrations, c'est ici qu'on vient, en tout cas.
Every holiday I come here, and today I woke up with joy, saying to myself I must celebrate the resurrection of our Savior and my King.
L'église, c'est la résurrection, c'est...
Christianity awakens us and gives us new hearts. I pray that God stays close to me and helps the people of the world, not only Christians but also Muslims and other believers in God, that we all may be blessed by Him and may He answer our prayers.
Donc c'est un peu ça.
Kanazaire Imakle, a resident of Bugesera district, goes to Foursquare Church located in Chimirongo, Gasabo district. She testified that following the footsteps of Christ has made it easier for her to forgive those who killed her family members during the genocide against the Tutsi in 1994. We are alive because we had a sacrificial lamb in Jesus Christ who died for us all. Like Jesus Christ said, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." That is how I exactly forgive people who killed my family members during the genocide against the Tutsi in 1994. And I feel freedom in my heart. This is majorly because once you belong to a church, you get to understand that forgiveness is a Christian virtue. Rwandan prelate of the Catholic Church, Cardinal Kambanda, on his part, urged Christians celebrate Easter while remembering their unity and relationship with others, free from discrimination.
The church in Rwanda has, for the last 125 years, we are now in the jubilee of the arrival of the gospel, and we embraced the faith in Christ, the Lord who is risen. It has accompanied us and made us to achieve so many things in building the family of God in Rwanda. But people are weak. We have had some failings in the history, but this does not take away the fact that there were also great achievements. The development, the peace, and the harmony that we are living, it is not without the contribution of the church. When we look at things positively, we also see the grace of God, particularly after the genocide perpetrated against the Tutsi. The long journey of reconciliation was accompanied by this faith, because before death and the tragedy of the genocide, to have hope it required faith and hope in the risen Lord. So I wish all of you to embrace Christ who is risen, and this will be our goal of life and our destination. A person without God, a person without faith in Christ who is risen, is a person without destination.
Why?
Because our destination is in the life everlasting, the life to come. Our life here is short. So this does not mean that we don't care about the present life and human activities. We participate fully in the development and in the betterment of this world to make it more decent and more human. But with the light of Christ who is risen and this hope, it gives us even more courage and hope in what we do, looking to Christ who is risen.
In addition to those who went to churches for prayers, those who continued their usual business activities reported seeing more customers than on the regular days. Usually not everyone goes to church. Some stay to prepare meals. We have had quite a good number of customers turn up today. Across the board, songs of worship marked Easter celebrations for believers who express gratitude for the blessings God provides in their daily lives. Now, on Easter Sunday, a large number of Congolese citizens gathered in Rubavu district to celebrate the holiday in Rwanda. Among them were individuals who had recently fled insecurity in the Democratic Republic of Congo. These expressed appreciation for the Rwandan government, describing Rwanda as a peaceful country where anyone would wish to live. Along the road and on the rickshaws, many Congolese were seen moving back and forth to join the festivities. Both youth and elders conversed in Swahili and Lingala, enjoying meals, drinks, and music, and their joy was very evident. It has been nearly 3 months since Goma was taken by the armed group M23, which advocates for the rights of the Congolese people who speak Kinyarwanda, especially the Tutsi ethnicity. Since that time, the number of Congolese residing and visiting Rwanda has increased significantly. This rise is attributed to several factors, including eased cross-border movements and extended border opening hours between the two towns. Those coming into Rwanda constantly highlight the country's safety and warm reception as their main reason for visiting. Besides seeking leisure and relaxation in Rwanda, Congolese visitors also believe that the current calm at the border gives hope that trade between the two countries will recover and flourish again, just as it did in the past. Now, away from the drinks and the food, it has now been 31 years since Queen Rosary Gichanda was killed. On this date, RBA spoke with some of the people who lived with Queen Gichanda and others who used to visit her residence, which was located in Astreda, now Huye district. Here are the details. It has now been 31 years since Queen Rosary Gichanda was killed on this date. She was beautiful, both inside and out, loved God, and deeply loved her husband, King Mutara III Rudahigwa. These are words echoed by those who knew Rosary Gichanda, the last queen of Rwanda, who was killed on April 20th, 1994, during the genocide against the Tutsi. Queen Gichanda was married to King Mutara III Rudahigwa, who was baptized by Charles Leon PL. The two were married for 17 years until King Rudahigwa died on July 25, 1959 in Bujumbura. When Rwanda became a republic, Queen Gichanda was gradually marginalized. In 1961, President Gregory Kayibanda expelled her from the royal palace in Nyanza, and she moved to live in Butare, formerly Astreda. This is now Huye district. Those who knew Queen Gichanda say she deeply loved Rwanda, which is why she refused to flee the country during the 1959 persecution of the Tutsi, and even as others were being killed or forced into exile. Martin Wariraye, a resident of Huye town, recounts how he used to enjoy social gatherings with other young men at the Queen's residence. The Queen was beautiful. She was gentle-spirited and very calm. Her beauty was unique. I've not seen anyone as beautiful in this country, no one at all. I am among the people that frequented the palace. Usually, it was full of many people living there, and the Queen Mother lived there too. She was a very nice and welcoming person, even when she was the Queen. She was also very friendly, but very rare. We would sit there and enjoy social gatherings, but she would not be part of us. She always kept inside the house, most of the time. She usually kept in the room, while my friends who stayed there and I would be in the sitting room conversing. In Butare, Queen Rosary Gichanda lived a humble life with her mother and a few women who helped her with daily tasks. Teresa Mukakagwije explains how she used to accompany the Queen to pray at Butare Cathedral. She would wake up and get ready for church. She also had a prayer room at her palace, as many Christians currently do. In her prayer room hung 3 huge portraits of Jesus, Mother Mary, and that of Joseph. If you entered there around 3 p.m., you would be sure to find her in. On Sundays, she had a driver called Camille Mbonyi, who used to drive her to church. By then, I was a very little girl. Later, I got married, and I still went back to the kingdom, and we continued living together. She would bring me milk every time I gave birth. Later, I shifted and stayed around the university. She would send someone to ask me to go and drive her to church. I was still a novice at driving, so most of the time I ended up driving her to church in the first and second gears until we reached the church. Visitors to Queen Chichanda's home were always warmly welcomed and often served with milk. A 90-year-old Sarafine Namana, also known in Huye as Zirakamwa, frequently visited Queen Chanda and remembers her fondly. We often found her giving people milk. She would also give us. The other thing I remember is that usually we met at Good Samaritan meetings in Kigali. These meetings usually were focusing on helping the needy. What I remember about the Queen is that she was a very humble and kind person, and she was also Christian. On April 20th, 1994, around 11 a.m., soldiers led by Lieutenant Pierre Bizimana stormed Queen Chanda's residence. They arrested her, along with 6 women she lived with, and took them to an area behind the Ethnographic Museum of Rwanda, where they were executed. This was done under the orders of Captain Defense Nizeimana, who was head of intelligence at the Military Academy ESO. Her house still stands today and is being renovated as part of efforts to preserve historical heritage. Queen Rosary Chanda now rests at Mwima in Nyanza, where King Mutara III, Rudahigwa, and King Kigeli V, Ndahindurwa, are also buried. Now, in Huye district, 623 bodies of Tutsis who were killed during the genocide against the Tutsi were later raised in a ceremony held at Nyakibanda Major Seminary and the Catholic parish of Nyumba, formerly located in the Gishamvu commune. During the commemoration, survivors called for the identification and dignified burial of other bodies that are still missing, as many Tutsi were killed in the area, but their bodies are yet to be recovered. The commemoration highlighted that on April 20th, 1994, killings began at these sites after Theodore Sindikubwabo, then president of the self-declared interim government, urged local leaders in the Butare prefecture to separate themselves from the so-called Inyenzi and killed the Tutsi. Following his call, Kambanda Pascal, the then mayor of Gishamvu commune, and the deputy prefect Asil Simbarekura instructed the Interamwe militia to enter the Grand Seminary of Nyakibanda and the Nyumba Catholic Parish, where Tutsis were brutally murdered with guns, machetes, and other weapons. Now, despite the traumatic experiences they endured, survivors in Gishamvu continue to rebuild their lives and support their families. The 623 bodies laid to rest during this year's commemoration were retrieved from Njera sector in Nyaruguru district and others from within Gishamvu, Huye district. However, survivors continue to urge for further efforts to locate and give dignified burials to many other victims whose bodies remain undiscovered. The President of the Chamber of Deputies, Gertrude Kazarwa, who attended the 31st commemoration of the genocide against the Tutsi in the former Gishamvu commune, encouraged all citizens to come forward with any information that could lead to the discovery and dignified burial of more bodies. The Nyumba Genocide Memorial currently holds the bodies of over 60,000 Tutsi victims, with this newly buried group added to the number. Also, survivors of the genocide against the Tutsi from the sectors of Muganza, Mugombwa, and Mukindo in Gisagara district said that the extreme killings that took place in the former commune of Muganza and Chibai were intensified by poor leadership and the involvement of the Burundian refugees who had sought asylum in the area. These refugees played a significant role in the extermination of Tutsi who had sought refuge at the Mugombwa Catholic Church. Survivors expressed appreciation that the bodies that had been improperly buried have now been given a dignified burial. During the 31st commemoration of the genocide against the Tutsi held in Mugombwa Gisagara district, survivors testified that the presence of local leaders who supported the plan to exterminate the Tutsi, along with the refugee camp of Burundians, worsened the massacre of the Tutsi in the area. A representative of the families who rebuilt their lives, who reburied their loved ones, expressed gratitude for the district leadership and their support in relocating and reburying the bodies that had previously been poorly buried so that they could now rest with dignity. Vadasten Shimimana, the executive secretary of the Southern Province, stated that the forgiveness offered by survivors is a significant gift that has helped to foster unity and resilience in Rwanda. He also called on anyone with information about the whereabouts of bodies to come forward in order to further strengthen national unity. The Mugombwa Genocide Memorial now holds more than 34,000 bodies of genocide victims, with an additional of 3,777 laid to rest during this ceremony, and of these, 3,765 were relocated. Also, survivors of the genocide against the Tutsi in former Nhongwe commune, located in Ruhango district, express frustration that 31 years have passed without Burundians who played a role in the genocide in that area being brought to justice. 38 bodies of the victims of the genocide against the Tutsi were given a dignified burial at Chinazi Genocide Memorial in Ruhango district, which already holds over 63,000 bodies. Survivors in this Mayaga region, formerly known as Nhongwe commune, state that Burundians from a nearby refugee were among those who cruelly participated in the killings of their loved ones. The Southern Province was not the only area hosting Burundian refugees, as pointed out by Dr. Philbert Gakwenzede, president of Ibuka. Multiple areas where these refugees were sheltered, appointed to by genocide survivors, as places where some Burundians were involved in the killing of the Tutsi in 1994. However, despite the Rwandan government and the Ibuka having made numerous efforts to ensure that justice and the Burundian authorities have persistently turned a blind eye, refusing to acknowledge the role of some of their citizens in the genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda. Dr. Valentin Wamaria, Minister of Environment, urged the people of Mayaga not to be consumed by grief, emphasizing that the tragedies endured have given Rwanda lessons that will help the country stand firm against those who wish to destabilize it. Tutsi who had sought refuge in former Nhongwe commune defended themselves on April 18th and 19th, but on April 20th, 1994, the then then Ntongwe Charles Kagabo joined forces with those in Interahamwe, leading to the massacre of many Tutsi at the Nyamukumba football field.
Nyiri muto arababwiraga data bati ntabwo wagira umukamo mwinshi utunze inka imwe, ariko nigeze acika intege. Mama akinjira mu bucuruzi hari abamubwiraga bati ntabwo watera imbere udakorera mu iduka rigezweho, ariko ntibyamusubije inyuma, yakoranaga umwete. Njya muri kaminuza hari abanshidikanyagaho bavuga ko nashobora kaminuza naturuka mu muryango wifashije, ariko byarangiye nanditse amateka mashya. Igihe cyo gutera ishema umuryango wanjye kigeze, bamwe bakomeje kumbwira bati ntabwo watera umuryango wawe ibyishimo n'ishema, ariko narabishoboye. Hari abakekaga ko nasigira umurage ukomeye abankomokaho, ariko ubu mfite uruganda rutunganya amata. Banki ya Kigali yabaye umufatanyabikorwa wanjye mu rugendo rwose, inzozi zanjye ziba impamo. Bigereho.
Muri iki gihe twibuka ku nshuro ya 31 Jenoside yakorewe Abatutsi mu 1994, Minisiteri y'Uburezi ifatanyije n'ibigo biyishamikiyeho bazibuka abakozi bakoraga mu zahoze ari Minisiteri y'Amashuri Abanza n'Ayisumbuye, Minisiteri y'Amashuri Makuru, Ubushakashatsi n'Umuco, hamwe n'abandi bakozi b'ibigo by'izi minisiteri bakoreraga imirimo itandukanye i Remera na Kicukiro kuri Imprisco. Iki gikorwa giteganyijwe tariki 26 Mata 2025 guhera saa 6 z'amanywa kugeza saa 10 ku rwibutso rwa Jenoside rwa Kigali ruherereye mu murenge wa Gisozi mu karere ka Gasabo. Ni muri urwo rwego Minisiteri y'Uburezi itumiye abantu bose babuze ababo bakoraga mu bigo twavuze haruguru kuzaza kwifatanya nayo muri iki gikorwa cyo kubibuka. Minisiteri y'Uburezi iboneyeho kwihanganisha Abanyarwanda n'imiryango y'ababuze ababo bakoraga mu burezi by'umwihariko.
Mvangiye kubarira 1 2 3 itugwamo. So 1 2 3 gwamo. One girl. Mbere kanda akanyenyeri 3 kane 5 akanyenyeri 2 urwego maze nawe ugwemo.
Ndanezero umunezero nsaba umutima, ndakora akazi kanjye ndacatinga data ntizishira enda nawe gwamo
wikwisondeka.
Welcome back from that very short break. Let's continue our news to Vatican. Pope Francis has delighted Catholics celebrating Easter by making an appearance at St. Peter's Square in Vatican. It was uncertain if the pontiff would be well enough to take part in Sunday celebrations due to recent health problems. The Pope greeted the crowd and gave a blessing, and in his speech, read by an archbishop, he called for peace and the liberation of political and wartime prisoners in the church's Jubilee year. In a rare alignment of the faith calendar, this Easter is being celebrated by the Catholics, Protestants, and Orthodox churches, all on the same day. DW has more.
Well, the 88-year-old pontiff appeared right at St. Peter's Basilica on the balcony. He didn't actually read the speech, but as he came out, the crowds of tens of thousands of people cheered. They were happy to see him there. Clearly, that was a highlight. He wished them a happy Easter. And then after that, the message to the city of Rome and to the world, the Urbi et Orbi that is delivered every Easter and every Christmas, was read by a delegate, someone that the Pope had delegated to read it out. But even after that message was read out, he also blessed those present. And then, much to the delight of everyone, after all of that, he actually appeared down at St. Peter's Square itself on the Pope Mobile. Now, that is really quite significant. It came as a complete surprise to those gathered there. He went around, stopping occasionally even to bless babies that were brought to him. And the vehicle also made its way all the way down Via Conciliazione that leads to St. Peter's Square. So quite a significant moment, considering that just less than a month ago, Pope Francis was discharged from hospital after dealing with a 5-week stay, getting treatment for double pneumonia. And during his stay there, he risked his life. There were at least 2 occasions in which he risked to die. So considering that he's technically still convalescing for that, it was quite significant, his presence at St. Peter's Square today. Well, that message was his message, and we saw him emphasize the plight of the vulnerable, the marginalized in society. It was a general prayer for peace, as he does every Easter. He decried violence and war, and he also decried the problem of contempt towards the vulnerable, the marginalized, and migrants in particular. Of course, there have been issues on this particular issue of migrants vis-a-vis the new administration in the United States. But he also called for peace in the Middle East, particularly highlighting the plight of Palestinians and Israelis, saying that there should be a ceasefire, a release of hostages, as well as helping those that are starving. He talked about praying for peace for other Christians around the Middle East, and he also mentioned Ukraine and how it was important to pursue a just and lasting peace in that country. And then he turned his attention to the continent of Africa, calling into the situation in the Congo, in Sudan, as well as South Sudan, and in Asia, looking at the plight of the people in Myanmar and how they are facing armed conflict as well as earthquakes. So really calling for disarmament, calling for peace around the world.
Seema, the Pope finally met U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance this morning. What do you think the two men discussed?
Well, we did finally get confirmation that there was that meeting. It happened about half an hour before Pope Francis made that appearance at the balcony at St. Peter's. So it happened during the Easter service. We know that the U.S. Vice President traveled to Casa Santa Marta. That's the residence where the Pope is. He was alone. He was not with his wife and 3 children. It was a short meeting. The Vatican has confirmed it, and they also said that they exchanged Easter greetings. So not very much in terms of actual detail, but this was a meeting that was speculated throughout the Vice President's visit to Rome and to the Vatican. We know that he met top Vatican diplomats on Saturday for more concrete discussions on issues like migration, as well as other commonalities. The talks were described as cordial, but clearly there were points and opinions on various issues. For the moment, though, it looks like Mr. Vance did get the meeting with the pontiff that many have reported is something that he was looking for. Let's not forget as well, he is a convert to Catholicism. He converted in 2019.
Now, in a laboratory south of Montreal, Canada, scientists are busy trying to build the pathway for a new energy solution. Fuse is a startup on a difficult mission to commercialize nuclear fusion. Now, fusion is a process that occurs naturally inside the sun. When 2 atomic nuclei combine, they release energy. Here on Earth, scientists have been trying to recreate that for almost a century. But now, in the midst of trade wars and with our environment high on the balance, the race is on. BBC has the details.
In a laboratory south of Montreal, Canada, scientists are busy trying to build the pathway for a new energy solution. Fuse is a startup on an incredibly tricky mission to commercialize nuclear fusion, and we've been granted exclusive access.
Right here is our assembly area.
Fusion is a process that occurs naturally inside the sun, and it's what powers it. When 2 atomic nuclei combine, they release energy. Here on Earth, scientists have been trying to recreate that for almost a century. But now, in the midst of trade wars and with our environment hanging in the balance, the race is on.
Unlocking fusion power is going to be technology that, will propel humanity and unlock civilization prosperity for centuries.
The promise? Virtually limitless and more or less clean energy. For the nation that cracks it, energy independence and a windfall of riches.
When you think about SpaceX, they lowered the dollar per kilogram to orbit and increasing the reusability of rockets so they can launch much more frequently. And by doing that, they've unlocked essentially space and made that way more accessible. But for the nuclear industry, this has not happened. So what we're focused on is how do we decrease the cost per radiation and how do we make radiation much more available?
They've built Titan, a pulsed power driver capable of producing lightning in a bottle, the equivalent of 800 strikes at once. Inside there are 476 capacitors and 238 custom-made switches. Vahid was once one of Iran's top nuclear physicists and is now technical lead here.
Assembling 40,000 parts is not easy. You miss one part, you're going to lose the project, you're going to fail the project. Titan is the most challengeable project I've ever had. I love it.
And this is Titan.
Whoa. Check that.
Yeah, it's a 1 terawatt. The key innovation here is how do you trigger 238 of those bricks within less than 2 nanosecond delay or jitter between them. And that's kind of our core technology, is being able to build that triggering system.
What's holding you back?
Well, everything is a challenge, right? At first we built the machine, there's no playbook. We're the first to have built it.
May I ask, what age are you?
Yeah, I'm 24. I turn 25 next month.
How have you done this?
Yeah, so I'm still figuring it out, how to do it. Essentially growing up, my father was a nuclear physicist. That kind of spurred my passion for understanding how the universe works, and I really wanted to go see it for myself. How can I use my time in the most effective way? And I thought that pursuing fusion as a startup is the fastest and more intellectually honest way to make progress.
Whilst JC may not have decades of experience under his belt, he's convinced some serious industry heavyweights.
I spent 30 years at Los Alamos National Laboratory, where I had the privilege of working on national security programs. So what attracted you to Fuse? Clean, abundant energy production not only supports our economy, but it also supports national security, defense capabilities, and the like.
This is our machine shop, so we're able to rapidly prototype or build components. 75% of the cost of Titan is in 3 components, and now we built 2 of them in-house for a fraction of the cost and in a couple of days of lead time instead of months, and in some cases almost a year. So here's the Titan control room. Live feedback on voltage, charge voltage, the checklist, the air delivery system pressure, all of them are software controlled.
Despite efforts here, the rollout of nuclear fusion as a practical solution could still be decades away, according to experts who cite significant scientific and engineering challenges needing to be overcome. But that isn't deterring Vahid.
Are you making history here? We have already made it, so we keep doing that.
And they need to, fast. Billions of dollars are being poured into cracking fusion globally, and competition is close by. Sam Altman-backed Helion just secured $400 million odd for its efforts in its latest funding round. Several countries around the world are also gearing up. China's reactor, dubbed the Artificial Sun, is making massive strides. And in the UK, the Atomic Energy Authority aims to open the world's first fusion power plant by 2040.
Energy security is national security.
And we're very conscious to go all the way to ensure that, this technology stays in the right hands.
Today, they're firing their latest model.
So we'll start ramping up the voltage and testing out how will the machine, perform. We'll see what happens.
They're going through the final checklist preparations before they fire up Titan. My hands are getting sweaty. Don't know why I'm getting nervous.
3, 2, 1.
Will we solve it or not? To be determined. Are we going to make a large contribution in solving this large monumental problem? Yes, we're already doing so.
Fuse right there trying to commercialize energy, and that brings us to the end of our edition. But before we go, let's have a look at the headlines one more time. Christians in Kigali have noted that celebrating Easter during the period when Rwandans are commemorating the 31st anniversary of the genocide against the Tutsi serves as a reminder of the role of Christianity in addressing significant issues. It has now been 31 years since the Queen Rosary Gichanda was killed on this date. RBS spoke with some of the people who lived with Queen Gichanda and others who used to visit her residence. On international scene, Pope Francis has delighted Catholics celebrating Easter by making an appearance at the St. Peter's Square in the Vatican. Of course, that brings us to the end of our edition tonight, but we continue with our Easter celebrations. Our hope is that you enjoy responsibly. From me and the rest of the team, wish you a good night. Good luck.